Thank you. Thank you for having me. We've got a lot of topic to go through tonight, and it's really, the presentation is broken into three areas, or three sections. The first is why mind-body awareness. So this is a sort of a high-level conscious type of awareness of our mind and our body, and I'm going to talk about some basic concepts. We've already had some preliminary discussions that fit within what we're talking about here, particularly for those moving meditators. And then the second section is going to be the body logic experiential, and that's really the work I'm doing with clients. So we're overviewing that, what we do, how we do it, and some of the results we get. Okay, so this is really a training system. It's a mindset training, so you actually shift the way you process by training the neurosensory system in a unique way. And then finally, about half the presentation is what we call the cosmic consciousness lecture, from old to new, and a transformative practice, what it really means to have cosmic consciousness and how we get there. So I like to start with this slide that really shows human evolution. And as an anthropologist, on the lower corner, you see the iterative relationship between cultural and physical change. And that's how we became bipedal, that's how we became tool makers, that's how we grew a brain that had frontal lobes. That's why we're in this situation. We wouldn't have consciousness unless we had this early part going on first, right? Which were drivers separated from other great apes about 5 million years ago, and so forth. Okay, so that period, which goes on for millions of years, is really considered adaptation. So the environment put off certain stressors, and the physical aspect evolved, which gave us out of the arboreal realm into the bipedal realm. And one of the interesting things that we differ from great apes, does anyone know? A physiological factor. We're the only animal that has sweat glands all over the body. Okay. We're not going to talk about that tonight, but part of our program is a metabolic aspect, and we do talk about that. The sweat gland and what that means. And that's a whole nother topic. But the key about tonight's presentation is about transformation, because in modern society we're inundated with information. We're really, the culture is such that it's really putting stressors on our brain, and as a result on our function, as a result on our stress, and that's really disrupting and the root cause of disease. Okay, so that's really where you look at the gap here, the modern gap, and that's what we're going to be. Our programs are targeted at that transformation level. So I want to talk first about the body, our awareness of the body. Some people already talked about their walking and how that works. Athletics is really where how many competed in athletics in some level, recreational or higher levels of athletics, right? Most people, gym class, something. We move, right? When we're children, we move freely. Okay, and we do crazy things. We can jump over stuff without even thinking, right? Nowadays, you go, you're gonna stop. You're not gonna jump, right? But when we were kids, it's like I remember swinging and thinking I was gonna go over the swing, and that's never gonna happen. But I was trying. That is about our awareness. And when we're young, we have a high level of physical awareness. A little bit about my background, the body logic algorithm, which I used to develop and train over 35,000 athletes at the high school, college, and elite and professional level. Then we'll talk a little bit about exertion and being in the zone. Something near and dear to my heart was interval training. I was an All-American swimmer, and the idea of controlling how fast you swim in its ascending set is really something that is really quantifying yourself. There's a whole movement of quantified self. I presented to that meetup several times, and I always start with this slide because that's really, you should be able to quantify what you're doing without some artificial measurement. If you're really, the artificial measurement is designed to help you focus in and sort of as a biofeedback. In groups, we travel to optimize the brain nutrition. We talked a little bit about our metabolic program. Our metabolic program has worked with elite athletes. And then the one that's really near and dear to my heart is being in the zone. Clarity and focus. How many have ever experienced in sports being in the zone? Okay, handful. Yeah. That's what happens. Just to tie it back to sleep, I'll tell you a personal story. Years ago, when I was in prep school, we were an elite national caliber prep school swimming program. We used to swim colleges, and I was applying to Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, and we were going to swim them. So the night before that, I slept. That's the first night I ever remember having insomnia. I got up at 7 o'clock or 6:30 to get on the bus, and I slept on the bus all the way to Ithaca, which was about a 4 or 5 hour drive. But I was still tired, and when I started the race, I was the last one off the block. The absolute last one. And fast forward 40 years later, and I realized, hey, poor sleep, slow reaction time. And that's documented out there all over the place. And I think back to my time where here I am, I want to go to Cornell, I want to impress the coach, I'm the last one off the block. I still won, though. Okay. I still won. I caught up, I was so fast, I caught up to him on the first leg, and I ended up winning the race. But I was the last one off the block. But being in the zone, okay, I was a little slow, but then from there on I was in the zone. So it's something you can draw on. So that's the body side of it. Really the mind side of it is one of, I'm going to give several effects here: mind, time, space, and rhythms. And the first is the overview effect and the near-death experience, power up the brain, sort of the science and nutrition, and then indigenous, the primal response. So how many of you know about overview effect? Okay. You don't know about overview effect, Jim?
No, I just didn't hear you first.
Yeah, the overview effect was developed up by Frank White. I see some of his books around here somewhere, right? And out there, he's got a big, thick book. Well, in 1987, he wrote the overview effect, and it talks about having a different perspective from being in space. So Richard Garriott, who's a local entrepreneur, he actually went into space, and he gave a presentation. I went up to him, and he had experienced the overview effect. That was the question I had for him. Near-death experience, lots of experience around that. INAX has done an unbelievable job in background in terms of people who've had near-death experiences or people who can readily get out of body on a regular basis. This one here is about Eben Alexander. He wrote a book a few years ago, really journeying out of body. As a neurosurgeon, he was skeptical of the whole idea. Patients had actually told him about these experiences they had, but he dismissed them until he got flatlined. His brain was flatlined, and he was in another altered world for, I think, 3 or 4 days. So he's become a big believer. The neuroscience of enlightenment, David Perlmutter. Perlmutter is a functional nutritionist out of Naples, Florida, and Veraldo is a medical anthropologist out of Chile, I think it is, Chile. So these have developed the neuroscience of enlightenment. Our program will really look at energy and how we vibrate. Okay, we all vibrate in different frequencies, and so we use variable energy. Does anyone know what variable energy programs are? Variable energy are things, energy systems that you can measure. Okay, so like acupuncture is an energy system, but it's not measurable. You put needles in, and it's putative. It's more subjective. Okay, so everything we try to do has a strong putative element to it, which means it's measurable and repeatable to some extent. In the primal sense, someone talked earlier about entrainment, right? Entrainment is the idea of entraining the brain through sound and light, okay? So the flicker of a fire, what happens when we have a fire, an open fire, and we're camping, right? Everyone gets ultimately mesmerized, right? Hypnotic, you should say. And that's because the flicker rate entrains our brain. And we'll stop talking, we'll focus in on. So these are things that, you know, the idea of entrainment was first written up by a German physicist in 1839. So it's an old concept. And sound is another way to achieve an entrainment and a different state of mind, using drumming and things like that. Also, we talked a little bit about this in the prelim is really the inner rhythm, the rhythm of nothingness. And people have a hard time getting to that state, right? Where it's just so busy, and it's hard just to shut down. So a lot of people who said they meditate, you know, they're doing other things. They're using guided meditations, or they're doing walking and meditative walking. So they're active while they're getting into a calm, altered state, which is fine. But the real sort of pinnacle of meditation in my mind is really being able to sit quietly and totally get into a state of nothingness. So this is a journey, right? It's a different ways to get there, to balance your brain, because we're all stressed out. Pretty much, we're all stressed out. And so, and it impacts us, right? People get sick when they get stressed out. Diseases kick in. That's why things get piled up on people, right? Something happens and they get sick. So that's all key. So in my quest to understand this and to help people get into a state of nothingness, I really looked at neurosensory integration and using a multi-sensory approach to engage the limbic system. And we'll talk a little bit about the limbic system. I have a slide here coming up. But the limbic system is a very primitive brain structure. It's often called the emotional brain. It's all about survival, okay? So this is driving us every day. Anyone who has PTSD, this is the core driver. Anyone who has any type of anxiety, this is the core driver. So, you know, we have nutritional interventions for what's called the HPA, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal, right? Everyone knows what cortisol is, released by the adrenals, right? Epinephrine, these are chemicals that impact our body in a way to make it fight or flight. So how many think they spend a lot of time in fight or flight mode? Right? Come on.
Constantly.
Constantly, right? Constantly. No? You don't? Where are you?
Mellow,
You're always mellow?
except when I, occasionally.
Okay.
It's much less.
Okay, well, we got to get some more. Whatever she's got, we want it. Right? Yeah, some people, there is a gradient, right? Some people more so than less. Firstborns are the worst. Firstborns.
I was in the middle.
So my granddaughter, right? She's a firstborn. She has a little baby brother, 1 year old. He came to visit a few weeks ago, and her mother and my wife and the little granddaughter were going out. And I was going to babysit, right? Babysit the 1 year old. But before she left, she stood at this baby was upstairs. She stood at the base of the stairs and she says, "Now, Pops, if he wakes up, feed him and then put him back to bed." So she was making sure I knew what to do, right? Because she wasn't around me. So I mean, that's the firstborn, right? Taking responsibility, right? And if that gets out of hand, they get into this cycle. A lot of the people I've worked with, and a lot of people I'm going to share, I'm going to move into some sharing of some of those stories. Firstborns. They're by far the highest level. So limbic system really processes fear and anger, and it's involved in feelings of pleasure. So limbic system is in the sort of the center of the brain, the hypothalamus, the thalamus, the amygdala, and the hippocampus. The hippocampus is what draws on memories. The amygdala is the fight or flight part of the brain, and those are all targets for what we do. So we target the amygdala and calm the amygdala through sensory and different frequencies to alleviate that. Oops. Lucidity. So this is clarity of thought or style. So this is something that lucidity to me is something beyond lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is one type of lucidity, but to me, lucidity is any time you're in the zone. It's almost, you know, some people call it flow, but I call it lucidity because I think you access the flow through lucid images. Particularly in our program, we have what we call these lucid programs and mind flashes, and people have these movie reels. They see their pasts and they see other pleasant things. So once you do this enough, you can actually perceive better and get into a state of clairvoyance. And it's learned through experiential peace. I use the word peace because I just think that's a very comprehensive word that's all-encompassing in terms of mind, body, spatial position, everything, peace. The core is this is our what we call the neurosensory stack. So our program really focuses on storage. How many people store their stress up here in the neck? Okay, let's say the neck and shoulders stress. How many? We got about 5, 6, 7. Okay, how about low back? Low back, we got 3 or 4 there. Hips. Yeah, hips, right? And the fourth one is the abdomen, upper abdomen. That's a little rarer, but we store our stress. Why? Because it's not fight or flight, it's also freeze. Because most of the time when we're in a stressful situation, we're not fighting in modern society. We're not running away from the boss or the spouse, right? We're going to sit it out and we're going to try to work it out. And that's where it gets stored in the tissue, right? That's where the freeze happens. And that's why we store our stress. Most people store it up here, right? People love to be massaged in the shoulders. So this is the key thing. As we move up this stack, we get into music therapy. So we use all these things on this stack we use in our neurosensory program. We do some body work. We actually do some, not on here, we do some different electrotherapies. We use different types of music therapies, binaural beats, other types of rhythmic things, vibroacoustic relaxation, which is a table that actually calms the mind and the body, synchronizing the sound and the vestibular system and the proprioceptive system. Feedback, so we use a lot of light and sound machines, heart math, biofeedback, and then mindfulness, awareness, oxytocin, and consciousness. Now, oxytocin is very, very important in our work. That's a hormone that is secreted, very calming, and that affects the amygdala tremendously. So you get a lot of oxytocin, you're going to have a lot of amygdala response. So we've been doing this program for about 6 years, developing it, modifying it, tracking people through it. In the last year and a half, we actually started to measure our lucidity. Okay, so this is sort of let me say, before I move into this section, is there any questions about what we're doing before I show you some of the results we've had?
You say we, who's we?
It's always a journey with other people who've shown up in my life. But I lead this effort, but I do have a psychologist who helps me in data collection, and she's being trained to do some of these techniques. And so there's a team of people, but there's also a series of interactions I've had over the last, since I started in 2009, 8 years. And they've all added something to the program.
Do your subjects mostly find you, or you mostly find them?
So far, they find me for the most part. I haven't done a lot of outbound. That's about ready to change. That's one of the reasons I wanted to present at INAX, because we're coming sort of a coming out party in a way, soft coming out. We've been developing this stuff, getting amazing results, but now we're sort of looking to spread our traction to other people. Yes, Jim.
You mentioned that we store the stress in our stomach as well as these other 4 places that you mentioned. Do you think that that's related somewhat to obesity problems?
To obesity?
Obesity, yes.
No. I think it's related more to, well, it could be indirectly related to obesity, but it's just that we're more sedentary, right? Okay, animals don't get stressors, and animals shake it off. I mean, I'm carrying my cat, and I drop the cat, and she shakes. She jumps. She can handle it, right? I mean, the cat can jump from waist high, easy, right? You're not going to hurt the cat, right? But the first thing they do is shake it off.
They don't hold a grudge.
They shake it off. They literally shake it off. Watch it. And what do? We freeze. And so, to the point that we don't move enough, okay, we hold it in more, okay? I know myself, my personal journey is I get stressed out and I don't want to exercise because I'm stressed out. I mean, that's just the opposite. And that's why you need a higher level consciousness or discipline or something to say, by God, I know if I go, I'm going to be happier. I know it. And yet, I mope. Right? So these are some of the issues that I say, okay, well, how do you get to a mindset that gets you up off the couch to move to feel better? We know you feel better if you do the move, pretty much. So that's really, some of the challenge. Any other questions before we move into?
Bruce.
Yes.
Is your group called Intelligent Sleep, or is that a separate?
Well, Intelligent Sleep is a store. Okay. Intelligent Sleep is a store, and that store sells mattresses, a high-end mattress, and then we added these programs and different helpful things to help people sleep better. But what's happened is it really morphed beyond sleep into this brain health. Brain health is a higher level. Sleep is one of the key things. So my brain health program is all about quieting the brain, basically. Okay, that's I consider that the number one thing is to quiet the brain. Because if you quiet the brain, a lot of other things can happen. Okay.
Is there a particular name to your program at this point?
Body Logic Experiential is the program that I'm presenting.
Oh, okay.
So it's a 12-day adventure. Okay. Everything that that's a great question, Bob. Yeah. So Body Logic Experiential. That's what I'm calling this, because it's an experiential reprogramming of the neural pathways in your brain. It's the fastest way to do it. When people get adrenal fatigue, You go to a functional medicine doctor and they give you nutritional things to turn those adrenals around. It takes months to do it. Months and months and months, okay? What you can do in just a few weeks is shift the way you process and shift the way you think, taking the amygdala out of the way, and you get a whole new world much quicker.
I'm just wondering if you've investigated the effect on people who have difficulty sleeping.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Most of the people who come to us, because we're under that banner of intelligent sleep, they come for sleep. I used to do a different program. I would just I put them into the 12-day, and I teach them the behavioral aspects of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia as a sideline. And most of the people who don't sleep well who come through START. I'd say 60 to 70% of the people who start this program are sleep deprived. That's why they come to me. But if you're not sleep deprived, those are some of the best clients I've had. One lady came to me for being sleep deprived. She got a whole lot more out of it around her anxiety and work, and her husband showed up and he became one of my premier clients. Out-of-body experiences, lucid dreams, without sleeping, just being in my sessions. Just total, hallucinations. So that the people have, different types of hallucinative, flying, that type of stuff, very, very common.
So what is heart math?
Heart math is a biofeedback device, okay? It's a breathing device. It uses heart rate variability. It has an algorithm that's probably the premier algorithm of its type in the world. It's about 30 years old. And they're out of California, and you clip on a little device, and it'll give you a visual feedback of how your coherence is, which is a synchronization between your breathing and your heart rate. It's a primary measure of stress that your body is expressing at any given moment. So heart math, and it's an algorithm, and they're the leaders in that area. Other questions? Okay, great. So now let me show you about, so we've been doing this for years, and actually there was a movie here that was premiered, I think it was 2 years ago. You guys were there, right? The psychedelic psilocybin movie, A New Understanding. And the producer of the movie actually held a premiere down in Alamo Drafthouse South. Were you there, Bob?
I couldn't make it. We may.
Were you there, Jim?
No, I didn't make that.
Okay, well anyways, all the scientists came, okay? They all came, and I went for one purpose. And that purpose was to get a tool that I could measure what we're doing. But I knew I wasn't going to move forward until I got a tool. I could make it up and da-da-da-da. So, I went to a number of the guys down there, but the guy who helped me the most was Professor Richards out of Johns Hopkins. And he gave me the Mystical Experience Questionnaire Survey. It's really 7 areas. I added the last one, the aesthetic impact, I added to it, but it's a 100 questions survey. And this is what it measures: internal unity, external unity, sense of sacredness, objectivity and reality, transcendence of time and space, deeply felt positive moods, and ineffability, which means the inability to describe the experience. And then aesthetic impact, which is your impact of beauty from the experience. So what we do now is, once we take these people through the 12-day program, we actually give them the questionnaires, okay? So I'm going to share with you what, I just have 6 people I've got on the slides, but the patterns are similar if you put more. So I created a way of visually showing this, and so there's 8 dimensions of mystical experience, and so you can get 1 through 8. And those are, the x-axis is the level of experience, very slight to slight, moderate, strong, and extreme. So that's sort of how the graphic works. Here's the data. And so this is a little bit maybe difficult to follow, but this one here starts here very slight. 2 dimensions were measured very slight, 5 dimensions measured slight, and 1 dimension measured moderate. So he's a bit of a laggard. This person here, one slight, 4 moderate, and 3 strong. This one here, 6 moderate, 2 strong, and then this one here comes up here, one moderate, 3 strong, and 4 extreme. Okay, and then this one here, 1 and 7 and 2 and 6.
I'm sorry, what was the vertical axis?
The number of dimensions. Okay, if you go back here, these are the eight dimensions, right? And each one of these is scored into those 5 categories, right? 5 levels of impact. So you have eight dimensions, 5 levels of scoring, and that's what you get here. Okay, it's a little busy. Okay, but this
was before your program or after?
this is after the program. That's a good question.
So are each of the numbers on the vertical axis, do they correlate specifically to one of those?
No, just it's just a number. How many, each one is scored separately. So there's 100 questions, you got 5 questions, just total those up, you get a score for sacredness.
Okay.
Total these 5 up, you get a score for internal unity, external unity,
Okay.
aesthetic beauty, mood, etc. So one can be an extreme and one can be a slight. That's not likely, but
Yeah.
one can be moderate. And so, but this is how they sort of break out. About 50% in the extreme category, another 40% or so strong and slight. Okay, so that's just a way of sort of saying the impact people have from going through this program in a quantified way. Okay. Questions? It seems a lot perplexed looks
Well, it
here.
seems like if you don't measure before and after, you're not really getting a comparison of how the program actually impacted the individual.
No, because it's just is measuring the impact of the program itself, the experience, the mystical experience of it. You don't measure before. This is used in psilocybin research. You don't measure before because it's not meaningful. So.
But aren't some people having some level of mystical experience, or there's different ways of describing it before the program?
Oh yeah, sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. And you can tell that. You can tell it. But like I'm working with a gal right now who's PTSD, major league, deaths in her family, physical, sexual abuse. I mean, the whole 9 yards, right? For years. Up until her early 30s, when her sister committed suicide. So this gal is, and she's been around the block, okay? This gal is, I mean, these people go everywhere. They're firstborns. They're very responsible. Her father died at 8. Her mother had Asperger's, and especially the women, firstborns, they step in and they fill that hole for the family. And the wheels fall off at some point. They become
Caring too much.
well, they just can't process it. They're just overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed. They're stressed out. They can start getting sick. They don't feel well. They have autoimmune, on and on and on, cascade of problems, okay? And they go to pain, and they go to physical therapy and acupuncture and chiropractic and neurologist, and all of it is minimal because their stress level is off the wazoo. And if you have active cortisol and adrenals just kicking out stress, that's fight or flight. That takes priority over everything else. Give you this pill, fight or flight, knocks that down. Whatever you do, physical therapy, the stress knocks it down. I mean, there's impact, but it doesn't, any client, any practitioner will tell you they have the patients that don't respond. They all have them. And it's because, in my opinion, a lot of them have this overloaded sympathetic nervous system. So I took a gal who was 25 years old, 5 years post T-bone accident where she flipped 4 or 5 times, walked away with no broken bones. Gave her a clean bill of health. She had just come back from a mission trip. She had her best friend in the car. 2 blocks before the accident, she dropped her best friend off. Her best friend would have died, clearly. Okay, this gal, 6 months after the accident, she went to the emergency room. She walked out the same day. 6 months later, she started getting sick. She got sick. She went to neurologist, pain management, all the people I just said. Finally, a physical therapist friend of mine referred her to me, and in 3 weeks, we changed her whole trajectory. She never felt like that since before the accident. And it's all because we calmed the nervous system. So that's the benefit of it. Okay, so it's it's an amazing experience. It's fun. So it's experiential, 12-day adventure, multisensory, light, sound, vibration, and it restores the physical and psychological well-being of the organism. Questions, thoughts?
You mentioned psilocybin. Where does that fit in?
Well, psilocybin is being used in research. The reason I brought it up was because back here, this here is a measure. It's called the Mystical Experience Questionnaire, and they use it in psilocybin research. It was developed for
They
psilocybin.
take that test while they're on psilocybin?
After the trip, not during. After.
Okay, so they come down completely from it.
Yeah, the protocol for psilocybin research is you do psychological preparation, somewhere between 2 months and 3 months usually, and then it's a very organized, structured trip that's controlled in terms of dosage, and you've got people who are going to guide you, the psychologists and so forth guide you. They know how to direct you through the trip. And yeah, so it's been, there's a movie called A New Understanding, and that was developed by a guy here in town called Robert Barnstone. He produced it. He interviewed all the scientists at NYU, UCLA, Hopkins, Purdue. Those are the 4 major universities. So they're what I'm proposing here is that what I do in a natural sense, it's not as impactful or as bang over the head as psilocybin, of course, but it's more controllable. It's fun. It doesn't it's fun.
So, was what you do, I keep seeing like this 12-day thing, and then you made a reference to somebody 3 weeks later. So is this like a...
Yeah, well, we do 4, that's a great question. So we do 4 times a week for 3 weeks.
Okay.
So it's not 12, we give a
Oh, I
break.
see.
But you want to get the first 4 or 5 sessions in quickly. Because most people come in stressed out, and if they wait a week, they lower their stress, and they float back up. But when you come in day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, you start to get a lower level of stress, where the amygdala isn't as active, and that's when you start to get the benefits.
Okay, and so when you say they come in, like what, maybe you're going to go into this, I don't know, like come in where and what happens when you...
Well, I have a studio. Okay. So what happens is that it's that's a good question. I'll give you an overview of what happens. Okay. So there's an intake process. Okay. The idea is that you're born as a child of God with infinite possibilities, and as you go through life, we tend to shut down, okay? Because it's a survival mechanism, okay? We're all going to operate by that. It could be as something innocuous as your father losing your job when you were a 4-year-old girl and you just couldn't process it and you got worried and your parents argued because there was money shortage and, they're worried. It's nothing, that's just life, right? To something that's much more horrific in that people are sexually and physically abused in horrific ways, right? But it can be any number of those things. But everyone will go through life shutting down to some extent, okay? So this is just a way of opening that back up. And so we talk about that, we find out where the pivot points are in people's lives, and then we do, so there's a talk part of it, there's an intention, which is usually a positive sense, and we're going to go into some more of this, but I'll give you an overview, and then we start people up. There's a sound vibration technology that we use, and they lay on a table. It looks like a massage table. So they lay on their back. We do an assessment. We do some tapping. We use all different types of technique. We use tapping, electrotherapy, massage, vibration, sound therapies, binaural beats. A lot of the stuff that I've taught, we use a smattering of it, okay? And so we start them on their back. We flip them over to their tummy. We work their back really hard in terms of the electrotherapy. We vibrate the sacrum and the brainstem, and then we flip them back on their back one more time after about 15 minutes. And we put headphones on them and we let them go on their journey. So we prepared them at that point, and that's when the magic happens. So does that answer it?
Yeah, and then the oxytocin, do you prescribe oxytocin?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, we everything we do is generate endogenous drugs, endogenous chemicals.
Okay.
It's all endogenous.
Okay.
We stimulate the body. The oxytocin is readily available. We'll talk about that, okay? We'll talk about all the different chemistry, okay? But that's a great setup. Because that's a rather excellent question. So that's sort of the mechanics of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is sort of the end of the program part of it, okay? In terms of what I'm going to do, move now into the third part of the presentation called the cosmic consciousness.
One question before you
Yes.
get to that. So all of this 4 times a week, 3 weeks, how long is that process?
Each session is about an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 minutes.
About an hour and a half?
Yeah. First one a little bit longer. Sometimes we have to tee people up. And the last ones are quicker. People know how to respond. They're getting feedback. This is training. I call it marathon training. So I told the gal I was working with today, 68-year-old, hasn't slept in decades. She's now running a 10K. She's got a ways to go, but she's running 10K. She started as a couch potato in relative terms. But this is a mind training program. It's a mindset training program. It's changed her whole life already. She says, wow, she'd forgotten. These people forget how to be relaxed.
Did you ever run before?
It's not really running. This is a metaphor for the mind.
I'm worried.
No. So these people walk meditation. That's why we're confused.
Oh, okay.
No, it's just a metaphor. The idea that if you're a couch potato today and you're going to say, I'm going to run the Austin Marathon next February, right? It's going to take you a while to get ready, right? You're going to walk a few blocks, and you're going to run a 5K after 3 months, and you're going to run a 6K or 10K after 5 months, and then you're going to start doing longer distances, and it takes a while. Well, this is the same thing. This is training. This is experiential training. And you take it home, and you have homework at home. And homework is pay attention, because everything starts to shift. And you start to recognize it. And people will come back and they'll say, I usually get upset, and I didn't. So one gal, she had a business partner that picked on her every conference call on a Wednesday afternoon. And he didn't like her. She was really a good worker. And after 6 sessions, halfway through the program, she had this Wednesday afternoon conference call. And he says, you're lazy and you're behind schedule, basically is what she said. And she reported she didn't emotionally hook onto that. In the past, she would have said, no, look at that, I've given you this and this and this and this, you know, defending yourself, right? Her husband did that on the other line. And after he realized what happened, he came into the program 4 days later. Because after she said, look, I didn't bite because of what I'm doing with Dr. Mel. And so it shifted her whole awareness, and that's what happens. Everybody reports it, everybody. So that's where you have a psychological well-being. So any other questions about the program? Then we're going to move into more of the background stuff, answer some of those questions about the chemistry and the endogenous stuff. So this is, let's see, somewhere I had some, oops. Yeah, this is what I want to do. So we're going to go through the cosmic consciousness, sort of part of this presentation, the history of cosmic consciousness, autoscopy, positive sense presence, and theories of transformation. So I'm not going to go I'm going to blast through this because I still got another 30 slides, okay, 25 slides. So I'm going to pop along that, and if you have anything, stop me, okay? There's a lot of detailed information. I could spend 2 hours doing this section alone. But we start with a book called Cosmic Consciousness, published in 1901. There's a hardback copy over here on the shelf. I walk in, this is the first thing I saw. But this was a study in the evolution of the human mind. Okay, and it's a very interesting book, and it has references to everybody from Buddha, Jesus Christ, Muhammad, to Dante, Francis Bacon, Walt Whitman, and others. Okay, so cosmic consciousness, and I want to read this to you. There are 4 stages of consciousness. First, the perceptual mind, the mind made up of percepts and sense impressions. Second, the mind made up of these and recepts, the so-called receptive mind, or in other words, the mind of simple consciousness. The third is the mind made up of percepts, recepts, concepts, sometimes called the conceptual mind or otherwise the self-conscious mind. And fourth and last, we have the intuitional mind, the mind whose highest element is not of recept or concept, but intuition. This is the mind in which sensation, simple consciousness, and self-consciousness are supplemented and crowned with cosmic consciousness. So it's the intuitive mind. Okay, so that's really what we're targeting. You know, in the more modern, Deepak Chopra a few years ago, 2014, 3 years ago, published a book. And here he says higher consciousness is observational and experiential. And all matter and energy is a vacuum and nothingness that contains all of possibilities. So these are things that you've probably seen in the past. And that's what cosmic consciousness sort of bookends of definitions. I'm going to move into an area of autoscopy. I found this very interesting in my research. Okay, and this is really something where on the bottom you see self-portraits of Durer, Rembrandt, and these are people looking sort of in the mirror, an image of themselves, and reflecting on who they are. We also get in literary reference doppelganger. And this is from the movie Animal House. Anyone remember that movie? Okay. This is a sign, you know, we're all sort of have that going on, right? The good and the evil. The temptations we have in our life are always there, always present, right? And so these are different ways of how different autoscopic experiences have been recorded in literature and painting. This is a work by Olaf Blank in Switzerland. He's looking at different types of autoscopic phenomena, hallucination, heteroscopy, and out-of-body experience. So these are all considered autoscopic. Some of them, the most common is the autoscopic hallucination. The least common is the one in the middle, and the out-of-body experience is the most profound. But all of them are different types of out-of-body or altered states. Okay.
What was that center one?
Heteroscopy. And it's where you have neither one of it, you have an image of yourself that is, neither one is real. So it's it's very rare. That one's very rare.
I don't understand that.
Well, read it here. It says, let's see, the finding that well, let's go on. There's some more stuff about how these break down, okay?
I'll look it up later.
Yeah, there's another slide here that will give you more breakdown of how it differs, okay? Someone mentioned about the temporal parietal junction. These are ways that is a common way to stimulate an altered state or an autoscopic experience, okay? Our way is really looking at the positive sense presence and focusing on the pineal gland and the limbic system. We talked about the limbic system already. We showed about the hippocampus and the amygdala and the hypothalamus, etc. But then the pineal gland is the only unpaired gland in the brain. There's only one pineal gland. Okay, does everyone know what the pineal gland does? It releases the majority of the
They call it third eye.
Melatonin.
melatonin at night. Yeah, that's one of the reasons. So melatonin at night. We'll see some diagrams of exactly what that does. But the pineal gland is sensitive to light. There's another part of the brain that's tied to the pineal gland called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the SCN. That's really the lifeblood of light. So when light comes in through our eyes, the suprachiasmatic nucleus gets stimulated and it affects the pineal gland to release melatonin, circadian rhythms and all that type of stuff. That's another lecture. But today we're looking at the pineal gland and high concentrations of serotonin, melatonin, and DMT, which is a derivative of those molecules. The other aspect we look at is the positive sense of self, the left amygdala versus the right amygdala. The amygdala is the fight or flight part of the brain. The right amygdala, in most people, is wired to the reptilian brain, the ego-driven aspect, whereas the left amygdala is wired more to the frontal lobe and a sense of self. Okay, the right amygdala responds to oxytocin right down here, and that oxytocin actually decreases its activity, and that's key part of the physiological metabolic target of what we do. So we look at developing senses. Someone was talking about some of this, I think you were earlier before we started, beyond the 5 human senses. The sixth sense, common sense, the sense of right and wrong, morality, seventh sense, clairvoyance, telepathic. There's a whole world out there of awareness that we're mostly turned off to. So this is why it's a marathon, right? This is why this work that we teach people, and this changed my life, okay? I went from having 5 senses to all of these different types of senses, telepathic senses. People who've gone through the program have telepathic experiences all the time.
I believe there's an infinite number of senses. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could say that, but these are things that we can classify and agree that there's. If you hear something like that, one of my mentors was very big in clairaudience. So he would get a song, just a melody of a song. He would go and look it up, and he would read all the lyrics to find insight into what was going on. One time he was going to take a trip on his motorcycle from Austin out to Marble Falls. And he had this song in his head. He looked up the lyrics, and it talks about policemen on the trip. And he saw 4 different police people. So it's sort of like a telepathic, clairvoyant. I mean, we get messages all the time. We just basically don't pay attention to them primarily. Then we got movement and balance, kinesthetic, proprioceptive in the vestibular system. Proprioceptive hallucination is really is a floating sensation where you float. People do that often in our program. vestibular system. We actually do a full body vibration system as part of the warm-up. So we really stimulate. These are all things, these are all targets for us. We create an environment for mindset and setting, an empathy connection, and then engage the senses in a progressive way, adding to it session by session, and the intensity. So we vibrate it, we change it up. Everything is a little bit different each session. There's other tools to induce positive sense presence. The diagram here shows what's called the God helmet. It was something developed by Michael Persinger. Some of you may know that name. They're really targeted on the temporal parietal lobes, as you can see here, where the electrical stimulation. They're using electrical stimulation. We're using more of a neurosensory input to create the state. This is a little bit. I think ours is more targeted, more effective. I would say higher production. Here's to some of the chemistry that goes on. These are neurotransmitters. So someone asked about melatonin and different things of that nature. But these are glutamate, which translates in a precursor for GABA. That's our inhibitory neurotransmitter. Glycine is also inhibitory. And the dopamine and acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is sort of the speedometer of the brain. You get more acetylcholine, the world slows down. When the world slows down, you're not as likely to kick into fight or flight. That's basically how it works. And everybody who goes through this program will report that they don't kick into fight or flight as quickly. And if you work it and you train it and you do this stuff, so what I'm proposing is that you can train your limbic system through an experiential process. Here's some of the additional chemistry. Phosphines are very common. These are little lights that sort of flicker. White and red are most common.
Visual snow.
Pardon me?
Visual snow.
Yeah, visual snow. Yeah.
CES. Those are visualization.
Yeah, I mean, you could call it that. Oxytocin, that's a key mammalian hormone, neurotransmitter or neuromodulator in the brain. And its receptors are amygdala, hypothalamus, pineal gland, and the brainstem. So it's really targeted on the limbic system. Endogenous opioids, we induce endogenous opioids through some of the special therapies we use. It's all been documented in enkephalins, endorphins, endorphins. And then serotonin is also leads to that. So these are the different chemicals. This is what happens. You have a change in perspective. The inner life becomes more focused and balanced. And you start to get internal unity and external unity. We call it Jedi training because you take control. This isn't something, I'm just a guide. I'm just a facilitator. The person takes control, and I can tell you that I had a guy who's probably 57 years old, 58 years old, a contractor. Does remodels of homes. He's been doing it for 25, 30 years. He's really good at it. He runs up to 10 crews, which is a lot of work, okay? A lot of 10 crews with 10 women all picking out, you got the wrong color, you didn't put the floorboard in right, all this stuff, right? So he's under a lot of stress. He came to me because he didn't sleep, okay? And we identified this conflict he had constantly in his business with people, not that they're upset, but it's just another thing he has to do, right? He has to get his people there on time, he has to get the work done on time, he has to get it done at the right price, and then he has to address all the idiosyncrasies of the people he's doing work for because they're very particular. The right type of tile, in the right type of way, et cetera, et cetera. So he finished up his program 12 sessions before Christmas, and about 2 weeks ago he came in and he says, I don't get upset with my customers like I used to. He has every day he's having these experiences, and he's had them for 25 years, so he knows how it gets him upset, and he can record after this program, and he's going to come back and do another set. He's going to do some more. So, consciousness, perception of what's happening. It's transformative in nature, as we shared in the beginning, and we use two different theories of transformation. One is the chaos theory of dissipative structures, where you introduce energy into an organism and it reorganizes itself at a higher level of being. Okay, so when you're in chaos, most people live in chaos. It's sort of like being in bumper cars, right? All the things that are in your life, you're constantly, it's beating the pants off you, right? And you don't know where to turn. Okay, well, one of the images we teach is that this energy we give you during these sessions will reorganize the organism at a higher level. And that higher level positive sense presence will flood out the negative sense. And that's the difference. The other one is one of emergence, where complex systems come into a pattern of synchronicity. So that's it really for me. This is a repeat slide of the program. Any other questions or thoughts? Jim?
Have you used this program at all with people who are suffering with addictions?
No. Not really. No.
It might be usable.
No, because if they're on drugs, it's going to impair the reality of this.
It would be extremely useful for recovery.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it could be useful for recovery. I do think if they're off the meds, or off the drugs or alcohol or something, yeah. I mean, so in that way, yes. I just haven't done it.
One other question, follow up to that. What about people who suffer from depression?
Oh yeah, that's depression. Yeah,
Does it help that?
yeah, absolutely. So you got depression, pain, anxiety, and sleep are all interrelated. Those are like cousins, first cousins, right? Most people who have trouble sleeping have one or the other, right? A lot of people have pain, they have low back pain, or they have fibromyalgia. They can't sleep because they can't get comfortable, in part, right? And then when they do get comfortable, they still have pain because they have pain. So we deal with a lot of that type of stuff. They come to us for the mattresses, but then we introduce them to the programs. And
Question: Do you recommend that people give up stimulants like caffeine?
yeah, I mean, I think reducing that as much as possible is good. You don't want to do a lot of stimulants before you do this program. You want to come in as clean as possible. We do a lot of green tea. We like green tea from the Metabolic. So I'm constantly taking antioxidants and reduce inflammation.
It's not the theanine, is it?
Theanine is a good one. Yeah. Theanine is in green tea. Yeah.
Well, it's in black tea too.
Yeah, but not as high concentration. The
I was
antioxidants.
just reading about it. It depends on how long you leave it brewing, I think.
Well, there's a lot of factors, I'm sure, but green tea and white tea tend to know. So I drink a lot of green and white tea.
How about like shaga, cordyceps, and
How about what?
shaga, cordyceps?
No, I don't do anything like that. Any other questions? Okay, yes.
Could you just, you were just on your metabolic. You said you weren't going to talk too much about it.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about it. So our metabolic focus for the brain is all about insulin signaling and iron. Iron being, intracellular iron being the main cause of free radicals in the cell. Okay, everyone know what free radicals are, right? Most people now know antioxidants counteract the free radicals, right?
The simple thing I learned is that if you don't breathe for 5 minutes, free radicals will kill you, and you'll basically die. Anybody will die if you don't breathe for 5 minutes. Basically.
Well, I mean, you've got to constantly be addressing the free radicals. So let me tell you a story about iron, okay? Because this is a core part of what our metabolic program is focused on, okay? So, aerobic organisms, why do we need iron? Okay? What does iron do in the body? Right?
In the hemoglobin?
Right. Carries oxygen, right? Primary thing that iron does in the body is carry oxygen in the bloodstream as well as within the cell, carries the oxygen molecule to the mitochondria to create the ATP and create the energy, right? So, 3 billion years ago, iron got the idea of associative relationship with oxygen. And the idea of single cell aerobic organisms were born and extinguished instantaneously. Why? Free radicals. Nothing could counteract the free radicals. So the 500 million years, a study came out about 2.5 years ago that said for 500 million years, between 3 billion and 2.5 billion years, aerobic organisms, single cell organisms were inhibited by iron. Iron created the free radicals and they died. 2.5 billion years ago, melatonin came into being. Melatonin is the original antioxidant. When melatonin came into being, you then had the proliferation of aerobic organisms, because now melatonin acted as the antioxidant to recycle the free radicals. As you went from single-cell aerobic organisms to multicellular aerobic organisms, the key communicator between the cells, because that was all taking place within one cell, you had to have communications. The key communications was insulin. Insulin system is a super old system. Okay? Billions of years old. Once you went from single cellular to multicellular, insulin was required. That's the communications. We know what's happening with modern humans and insulin, right? We're all insulin resistant. So that, to answer your question about our metabolics, that's what we focus on. We focus on iron, insulin resistance, ketogenic diets, those types of things. But primarily detoxifying the brain. So that's an overview. I didn't give you details, but I gave you sort of the philosophy.
Ketogenic diets being favorable or unfavorable?
Well, ketogenic diets are favorable, right? Because the brain is only metabolizes glucose, right? It doesn't metabolize fats. So fats that are stored in the body get converted into ketones in the liver, and ketones are then burned as glucose in the brain. So you have this process. I find this fascinating, okay? So here we are, primitive man, chasing down a gazelle, right? We can't outrun them. We can't really, we have to run them down until they get exhausted. And we can outrun them only in the sense of distance, okay? We can't outrun them in the sense of speed. So we're starving. We got our line on the gazelles. We're starving, and we have to be smarter as we chase them. We have to learn, right? We have to determine how we're going to track them, right? And so the brain has to be functioning well. And what's happening is we're starving, but the little fat we have is being converted into ketones, and ketones are creating neurogenesis while we are starving. Hence, the ketogenic diet, which is all these moderations of, you can eat these types of foods and those types of foods and get into ketosis. A lot of it I don't believe. The way to get into ketosis is to fast, primarily. I know there are a lot of other techniques. I haven't really researched them, but I don't believe most of them. Because I had a guy say, you can eat up to 50 grams of of carbs and still be in a ketogenic diet, I don't think so. So people have a lot of, you know, a lot of junk out there about ketogenic diets. But we focus on creating a ketogenic metabolic environment that's similar to what the ketogenic diet. So you can say, put a person on a ketogenic diet, what happens metabolically within the cell? The ketones, the iron detoxification, and all these things. So we optimize the same thing as a ketogenic diet without the diet.
So do it for the whole 3 weeks? Or just,
This is a
days
question
at a
about the
time.
metabolic stuff. This is
that's
totally.
not what you do during this
No,
12 days?
No, sometimes we do use some of the pink lotion during that time, but not, we have multiple stages to the program. So there's the behavioral stage. So if you're really insomniac and you hadn't slept for, you wake up at 3 o'clock every day for the last, decades. Thought you said you weren't stressed.
Oh, no, I just wake up and go back to sleep.
So.
How do you do the ketogenic without the diet? So are you saying all these other things that you do just naturally?
Well, the benefits of ketogenic diet is to detoxify the cell. Okay. The benefit of the ketogenic diet is to reset the insulin signaling because you're using ketones instead of glucose to get it into, you have low glucose, right?
Right.
So if you get into a ketogenic diet, you have low glucose. What does that do? That allows your insulin says, oh yeah, I got a holiday, I don't have to work as hard. Well, if you have insulin resistance and you lower the need for insulin, it's a therapeutic benefit because it'll allow the body will recalibrate itself, right?
So how do you do it without the diet? Or did I misunderstand what you said?
Okay, you do it by detoxifying the cell and improving the insulin signaling. So we have a product called the pink lotion. You rub it all over the body, and it's basically magnesium and chromium, both of which are known to be insulin mimetics, and they will dramatically shift the way you process glucose in your body in a matter of 5 minutes.
Can I get some?
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's it's super impactful. Okay. So you asked the question.
How do you do it without the diet? So
Yeah, well, you asked the question a long time ago. Is when I said we. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Ken is one of the we. Okay. God brought people into my life to do this journey. Okay, all along the way. I'm just sort of the systems person putting it all together. But Ken was one of the first ones. He's sort of a savant. He is a savant. Okay. He did amazing work to come up with this pink lotion, which is magnesium and chromium. He's got a patent. He just got it a few weeks ago. Formally received the patent. And it changes insulin signaling. And when you change insulin signaling, that changes a lot.
How much does it cost?
How much does it cost? We could talk about that. I'll give out my card. Yes.
If it affects the insulin, then would that be helpful for diabetic people?
Oh yes. Absolutely. Yeah, diabetics. Yeah, I mean, this guy who invented it met a woman at Central Market who was shooting insulin for her diabetes. Over the course of 90 days, he got her off the insulin. She married him. I'm serious, she married him.
Is it diabetes 2 or 1?
What's that?
Is it diabetes 2 or 1?
Diabetes 2? Type 2?
Or type 2? Right?
It'll help both, but type 2 you're going to...
Type 1? Because that's,
Yeah, you'll reduce the amounts of insulin you need on type 1.
yeah. But they're totally different causes. Because I think type 1 is caused by virus in the children. It's the children. It
Well, but
destroys the pancreas.
Well, yeah, the pancreas is in type 1 you can have no production of it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you improve the
Type 2 is yeah.
but if you improve the insulin receptors, which are there's tens of thousands on every single cell, And if you improve the receptivity of the insulin receptors, you don't need as much insulin to do the same amount of work. So you shift. So if you're a type 1 diabetic and you need this amount of insulin on a scale to be whole, you use the pink lotion and you need a little bit less.
Found people have a problem with that much chromium, taking chromium.
You're
Because
not,
it bothers me. I tried taking some once in a vitamin and I can't do chromium.
well, this is transdermal.
Well, still it's going to be taken in. I don't know. Well,
You're saying it's through your lymphatic system. So
We haven't had that trouble. But it's transdermal. You're going to have trouble with anything going through the gut because you don't have enough stomach acid. We're all deficient in some stomach acid, and that's a link back to the iron. Questions? You have a question? You good?
I was just noticing, I thought this was gonna be about lucid dreaming. That's what it said somewhere, but still interesting.
Well, it is about lucid dreaming because the program you lucid dream the whole time.
well, you're conscious.
Okay, so let me address that. Okay, because she's keeping me honest. But people have during the 12-day program they have. Some people will get it right away. They have these what we call mind flashes, where they have these images, specific images. Most people will get a movie reel when they start.
Yeah.
They get the phosphines to start, little lights, and they go through movie reels and they get multiple images. Okay, so I call all those lucid experiences. Okay, because people go back to their childhood home. One guy I had went back to his childhood home 3 different times in 12 days. He walked into the home, he met people in this home he didn't know. He had childhood memories come back. So I call that's beyond lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is a pretty rare event for most people, right? Now, most people don't lucid dream a lot. I have some ideas about how to help lucid dream. I use a bed of nails at 3 in the morning if you want to lucid dream, if you know what that is. It's an acupressure mat,
Yeah.
and stimulate the sacrum and stimulate the brainstem, the base of the skull, and my probability of having a lucid dream goes way, way up. Having vivid dreams is almost assured, and having lucid dreams is way increased. So since I've been doing that program, I probably have lucid dreams 25% of the times I do that. 25-30%. It's very simple. Someone else had some other techniques. Yes, Jim?
Do these the dreams that you're talking about in the program, are they occurring while the person is awake, or are they
They're awake.
sleep cycle?
They're awake. They're not sleeping. They're in theta. They're in theta delta, right there at 5 hertz is where they are. Where you're just sort of like, that's where the lucid events occur, in that frequency. Other questions?
So would you call that daydreaming?
Yeah, I mean it could be. It's not really like daydreaming. It's more experiential. I had a gal. I think did I mention about the gal who was flipped over 5 times, right?
Yeah.
I didn't really finish her up, but the idea of is to look at pivot points. Okay, so the idea is to change the amygdala. I mean, we're focused on get down, slap that, get down, because it's kicking in too much on all of us. Okay, I guarantee you, everybody, even you.
Constant.
Too much amygdala. So we look at pivot points. One gal I'm working with now, her dad died at 8 years old. Well, on session number 5, she had an experience when she was 6, wholesome experience playing with toys when she was 6 years old. So it's a positive sense presence before she had this traumatic event. So what I call that is the positive sense presence floods out the negative. So I had a lady who was 39 years old. She told me, session 6 or 7, she told me, can't remember anything before I was 6 when my parents got divorced. The intention for the day was an early time when you were happy. 40 minutes later, she says, I was 4 years old on the beach with my mom and dad. And she could explain this whole experience that she had. It was in her memory. She's a child of God with infinite possibilities, and she shuts down because that's how we live the human experience, shutting down. Because we're all about survival. And so we have varying degrees of shutting down and not very good ways of opening up. So that's what the program is, to teach you ways to increase awareness.
So I hear you, if I understand what you're saying, basically this is a way of reducing hypervigilance in the amygdala.
Yeah. Yeah, your amygdala doesn't kick in. It doesn't kick in. So events happen over and over and over. People will report. This is my favorite one, right? Let's see if I get this out. My keys, right? What happens when you lose your keys?
Stress out.
I lost mine today.
Panic, right? When do you lose your keys? You got to be out You got to be out the door 5 minutes ago.
Yes.
You immediately beat yourself up. Why didn't I put them on my desk or my sink or the 2 places I usually put them, right?
Right.
Retrace.
And then you say, "Wife, help me!" You know?
Don't even mention what's in
It's going.
They were in my pocket, but in a different.
Well, of course, whatever. But I always used to have.
in the refrigerator sometimes. That's the only thing.
So what happened? Okay, I would get so upset over it, right? We get a disproportionate response to losing these puppies. Okay? And so the first time I lost them after I completed the program, I was like, oh, my keys, yeah, okay. What happened last night when I came home?
They gotta be here.
No emotional hook. Zero. I mean, there is the first awareness, right? There's, oh, okay. Yeah, I'm in it heightened awareness of the event so that I can do something, but it's not, Bruce, why didn't you do this? Where'd you put them last night? Why are you so stupid? Why, you're not doing it the right way? None of that.
Well, I'm just not going. I'll just stay home.
Well, there's resignment, yeah.
Yeah.
You resign.
And then I found it.
Well, you always find them when you let down the amygdala, right? You always find them when you let go. So if you never hook, it's enormous. It's so impactful. So
one of the things I teach myself is that always tell a narrative throughout your day, so that if you do lose something, you can trace back your story. If you're full of distractions constantly, you're going to lose about 50% of your day, which means you're going to have that much of a hard time finding your keys.
yeah, it's all about awareness and where we are in space and time, right? That's where the proprioception comes in. It's all connected. We're an organism living through this crazy wild world, and we're getting bombarded, and we're using these phones and stuff is dangerous. This stuff is it's not healthy.
It's annoying.
It's annoying too.
Thanks, Al. You should tell me your theory.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Jim?
Yeah, you mentioned something earlier when you first started about measuring, if I'm remembering correctly, measuring vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Have you developed a tool to do that now, or Is that just a concept that you were?
We don't measure vibration per se. We use different types of vibration. So we use a full body vibration plate for most people to start. I found that that really accelerates. If everyone knows what a full body vibration plate, it's about 2 feet by 2 feet or so, and ours vibrates at 38 hertz, which is like, it's like rocket fuel. It'll vibrate your whole body. You'll feel it in the head to toe. You can bend your knees, and that'll wake it up. And people hate it the first time and then love it by the third time. They can't wait to get on the on that. And that just opens up the body. I make that equivalence to plyometrics in sports. Okay. So plyometrics is a technique that people use to increase the nervous system. So the explosive aspect of the neuromuscular reaction gets enhanced. You train it. You can train that. Okay. These are things we can train the nervous system. Yes.
How long do you stand on this light?
We usually do about 4 minutes, and that's enough to get people warmed up. And then after that, you go into the room and you set up. You get your you get ready. You start out on your back. Women wear a smock so we can get access to their back because we do massage and different things on their back. They wear a smock. Men can wear the smock or just take their shirt off, just depend. But what we do, remember the back here, right here. So this is really where we're focused, mostly down in here. But vibroacoustic sounds. Come over, you know.
Do you use sound bowls?
No, we don't use sound bowls. We do have every second Friday we have a session at our store with sound bowls, but we don't use them in this program. And we use different types of music. That some of it we've created ourselves, some of it we've used from other people. Yes.
Where's your store located?
7415 Burnett Road. I've got a card you can all take. Just
So do you charge for a 12-session program? Is that how you do it, or is it by the session, or what's the?
Well, we charge by the 4 sessions. $125 a session for 4 is $150 or $500. $500 a week. Sometimes we spread out the week though. We're not. Right now, I've got a gal who she was pretty amazing actually. The very first session, she had a movie reel, which is lots and lots of these visions and mind flashes, and she could remember most of them. Most of them were about animals. She had flying visions, very first session. So she's moved quite rapidly. Now she has a lot of PTSD types of issues. So we're spreading her out. She's doing two times a week for the last 4 weeks. So she did 4 the first week, and then she's doing 2 this week, 2 next week, 2, 4, 8 more spread out over 4 weeks. So we change it up depending on what people want. But we always want to start with the rapid fire, because we want to get you into this altered state of consciousness. And it's really just quiet. It's quieting your brain. Yes.
Are these sessions done individually or within groups?
No, individually. Yeah.
You mentioned PTSD. Have you done anything with bipolar disorder?
Nope. I've had some people who say they're bipolar though, been diagnosed with bipolar. They have great response. Yeah. And we've had good response on those types of things. Okay, anything else?
Do you take individuals and, like, they tell you their story or what their issues are, and then you take your program and give them, like, the whole thing in one session, or some of everything in one session, or do you, like, take each individual and, like, well, they need this first, and so we'll concentrate on that, like the mindfulness first? Or do you take each person and, like, okay, we're going to give you all of these things in each session, or do you just kind of break it up? Or?
Well, it's a little, yeah. They're not that different. Each session is generally the same. We always focus on relaxing, right? Getting deep relaxation. So we have a specific session. That's the first session. That's sort of the universal session, sort of the baseline session, okay? And we see how you respond to it. So we give you the baseline, and then at the end we go, okay, well, how was that? And so this gal I was talking about, she said, well, and she rattled off like 15 images. And she had a woman in a dress that was made of straps. And the straps were blowing in the wind. And then that hallucinated into a horse, the mane of a horse.
Cool.
And she just went on, okay, like that. Very first session. So that happens. It's rare, but it does happen.
Do you have people who have difficulty seeing the images?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you able to break it through?
Takes more, yeah. Yeah, we have people that start really deep in the hole. We look for a spark in the person, okay? People have not slept for decades, but I look for the spark, and that is a curiosity. It's a spark that's ready for the game, ready for the adventure, and they will pop pretty quick. What I call the pop is they start having the images. But you're right. I've had some people.
I'm the same person. That person, that's why I'm asking.
Well, yeah.
Different things and never see.
Well, the thing is, most things aren't multi-sensory. Okay.
No smell, no sound, nothing.
No, you don't do smell or sound? Or you have done all those things and haven't had success. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I tried, not much better.
Yeah, but when you overload everything, okay, and you have special sauce that we have, we can.
You can break it. The walls.
It's a little bit more like that.
Say, give it back to my wall.
Yeah, no, it is like a wall. You're right. I mean, that's the image.
It's a wall.
It's this. It's like you're going to protect yourself. That's survival. You are going to get into a mindset that is going to try to be safe no matter what's happened to you. And the more horrific it is, the harder it is to get to that safe space. But that's when we try to pick up and experience a memory, usually when you're young, that shows that you were more fully expressed as a child than you are today, because this is how you live. You're protecting. So it works on everybody. Some people get frustrated. Some people drop out because they want, instant gratification. But of course they've been living like this for decades. So that doesn't make much sense, but they're not good candidates, so not everybody gets through the program. But over time, I've figured out how to push down on the pedal and pull back. There were some people who have pushed too hard too fast, and there's some others I didn't push hard enough, fast enough. And that's just what I've learned. I've had to learn that. I've done some autistic kids, and I've done I had an Asperger's kid that was just amazing. His mother came to me and brought him along. This is a perfect example of the multiple sessions. So they came in on Saturdays for like 2 months. He came in with an anxiety disorder, a specific testing disorder in school. He was 17 years old, a junior in high school. And he had test anxiety. After 4 weeks, the test anxiety was gone. And his mother was coming with him, and she said, well, I haven't had my transformation yet. I said, well, she was very, her parents divorced at 6. Her mother was an alcoholic, and she took over the family. And so she actually came in and started the multi-day sessions. after about 6 weeks, so spring break was coming, she says, I can come in for the next 5 days. I said, let's do that. So she came in for 5 days and she had a breakthrough. When she come in a week, it wasn't close, it's just the old thing. We've got to relax, she floats back up. We got to relax, she floats back up. When she came in 5 days, boom, 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 ba boom. She got the experience that she needed. And the experience is that she's a child of God with infinite possibilities, and she's amazing, which we all are. We all are. Right? There's nobody who's not. Maybe there's some evil people, that are truly evil, right? But most of us are just trying to fight to survive.
Have you ever done work with children who have school phobia?
School phobia? No, not specifically that.
Okay.
But I mean, kids love this stuff. If they're healthy kids, they have some type of phobia or something like that, they love this. Because, because if they have that phobia, let me tell you, they got adrenals going off. They may be 9 years old, but their adrenals are working overtime. And it shouldn't be. Okay, it shouldn't be, for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be bad parenting or anything else. It's just, whatever. They pick up in the universe, they pick up, I'm going to be anxious, and they're anxious. And so they never have an experience of calmness. I had a gal, this is sort of funny, right? She was 14. Her dad called me, they lived in Wimberley, so they had a long drive in. He says, my daughter, she doesn't sleep, and da-da-da-da. So they came in, and they literally dragged her in, okay, literally dragged her in. What am I doing here? I'm asleep, okay, da-da-da. And we went in to do the sound therapy, and she was trying to get her mother to get on the table first. And her mother said, nope, you got to do it. So she did it, and she loved it, loved it. The next week they came back, she ran into the store. Literally, she ran in. She beat her parents. She got out of the car, she ran in. Okay, where are we going? So it's because she knew it was something that was missing. It didn't take much for her, right? Because she's still 14 years old. She's in puberty. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, but she's a healthy 14-year-old young woman who's trying to deal with all the crap out there, right? I mean, it's not easy to be 14 in this world. All the peer pressure, everything else that goes on. We all went through it at one point in different degrees, right? So, anything else? I can go on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.